welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 186 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 42, Life, the Universe, Everything, of A Storm of Swords. That's Daenerys 4.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you?
I am doing just fine. We just got off a really fun wild fireside chat. I thought that was a really good one.
We're actually kind of getting good at those.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's a different media because we're videoed.
Right.
So, for instance, we both checked our teeth before we started.
We did. In the camera.
But I think we were pretty stilted. The trajectory is similar to the podcast, actually. We went from being quite stilted and not sure what to do to being... This one was the best we've done, I think.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah, we've definitely had a good one.
And credit to the question, which was excellent. From
It
Vanessa.
was excellent question. I just had to use our podcast to defend myself right before I walked down here to meet up with you.
Stacey said, "What the hell do you do with your time?"
Roundabout, Stacey and Molly were getting on me about how they were questioning, what have I built? Like, a lot of my friends, some of my friends work with wood and they build bookshelves and things of that nature. And they're like, what have you ever built? And, I was naming things around the house that I fixed or put up or whatever. And they're like, no, what have you built from scratch? And I was like, you know what I built from scratch? I built a podcast from scratch. So how about that?
Yes, well done. You have attributes that are not manual labor.
Yes,
I don't
that
think
is.
I would take severe umbrage with my family if they asked that question of me, especially because I would have nothing to say.
Right.
I would go around showing the light bulbs that I've changed. I changed
right.
that one.
Yeah, I mentioned all of the light fixtures that I've replaced. So I kind of along the same lines.
Except that's real work. I literally just did the light bulb.
Well.
Now Lucas is taller than me. I've stopped doing that.
Yeah, that's right. He can do it now. He can take over that task. Speaking of things that I have done, I did something yesterday that when I did it, I thought, oh man, if Simon was here, he would probably bang his head off the wall in annoyance at what I just did. It was so me. You would have said to me, that was the most you thing I've seen you do. So
okay, let me take a hazard a guess. It involves overpraising something sappy and sentimental.
Definitely sappy and sentimental plays into it. So we have.
Wait a minute! You cried at work.
So we have a screened-in porch. Yes. We have two parts of our deck. One part's screened in, one part's not. And there have been 2 bumblebees that have been caught on the inside screened-in porch part of the deck. On the inside of the screens. Once they get in, they can't figure out how to get back out.
Yeah,
so
it's very difficult.
It's pretty standard to find dead bumblebees and wasps and stuff on the floor in there. So I didn't really think much of it. And then that was like a couple days ago. And then yesterday I was standing at my kitchen sink and there's a window from my kitchen sink that looks into the screened-in porch.
Yeah.
And in the top right corner of the screened wall there that I was looking at, the 2 bumblebees were side by side. And the 2 of them could have been anywhere in that screened-in porch. It's, there's some square footage to work with. But no, they were side by side to the point where their little bumblebee hands were touching. And I thought to myself, these two bumblebees, they've realized they're not getting out of here, and they thought this is the end of the line for us. So
And now they're holding hands as they go
yes,
into the long good night.
exactly. And so I started to walk away, and I was like, no, don't do it. Just walk away. They're just bumblebees. Just walk away. But no, what did I go and do? But I got it. They were up high, so I got a chair, and then I got Tupperware with a lid. And I put the Tupperware over top of them and used the lid, slid the lid around until I got them in the Tupperware, and then took them outside and put them on the banister of the unscreened in portion. And I thought, not on my watch, you two aren't going out like that.
Fly, Florian and Jonquil.
All right. And then I walked away shaking. I was annoyed at myself for how ridiculous that action was.
You know what? I can't fault that. I mean, I can poke fun at it and laugh, but that is sweet, and I would have done the same thing, I think.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, because I don't like to see animals in distress, and that clearly was a case of that. So yeah, I'll give you a pass on this one.
Well, that makes me feel better.
Well, good. I'm glad. Your boss. Do you know what he did last night? You
I
talked to
had
him
lunch with him yesterday, but that was lunchtime, so no, I do not know what he did after
last
lunch.
night. He did one of those sleep study things that I think you've done.
Oh yes, I
Where
have.
you get hooked up to a bunch of wires and things.
Yeah, completely pointless because
Yes,
who can sleep when you've got a million?
that's what he said.
Yeah,
Like all over you, like not just on
everywhere.
your head.
Yeah.
And to the point where they said, if you want to move, wave to the camera, and we'll come and help you move.
Uh-huh. It is ridiculous how many little nodes you have, and they put them on your legs too because they're checking to see if you have restless leg syndrome. So every
Jimmy
time
legs.
I would move my leg, I was like, oh no, they're gonna think I have restless leg syndrome. And the guy who works the night shift at that place and hooked all the nodes up to me and stuff, he was a very sweet, very kind man. But he walks to the door, and it was like he said, and sleep. And he turned the light off and walked out. And my eyes just got saucer big all night. I think they said I was in REM for 9 minutes or something all night long.
Not the best night's sleep you ever had.
No, not at all.
That's what Mark said. He said that typically, if you want to move, you just say, "Hey, I want to move." There's a microphone, and they pick it up. But the guy said the microphone wasn't working, so he had to wave to the camera, and so he wanted to roll over, and he waved to the camera. Nothing happened. He waved a bit more. Nothing happened. He picked up his phone and turned the light on. Waved with the light.
Meanwhile, the guy running the study was asleep.
Fast asleep.
Oh goodness. Well, I've started wearing my Apple Watch at night.
Which does all the things without any of the
pretty
aggravation.
much. I don't know how accurately it does it, but it gives me a lot of feedback. So
it may not be accurate, but at least it's reading your real sleep rather than
right. Yes.
Mark said he thought he slept about 45 minutes the whole night.
Yeah. Right.
That's miserable.
It's not ideal. So
he was cracking us up though with the cell phone, waving the cell phone in the night. Right, one of the things you're doing wrong is you're picking up your cell phone in the night.
Quit waving your cell phone around. What's wrong with you, man?
Sleep, man. I was thinking about it that they do all that to sort of guarantee the result. Oh, you have terrible sleep problems. Here, buy this $2,000 machine.
Right.
Anyway, let's get down to business. How did we leave Daenerys Targaryen? Well, last we saw of Dany, she was in Astapor, feigning like she was going to sell all of her possessions. Well, technically, Illyrio Mopatis' possessions, along with Drogon, who I'll say is hers, in return for all of the Unsullied, including those still in training and those uncut. However, when the transaction was complete, Dany freed all of the Unsullied and asked them to kill the slave masters. Oh, they obliged.
They sure did. Without hesitation.
Mackelly, why don't we give him the summary of this one?
Why don't we? Okay, so Dany and Ser Jorah Mormont survey the scene before the walls of Yunkai. 5,000 soldiers stand ready to defend the city against Dany and her recently acquired unsullied army. The enemy army is made up of 2 bands of sellsword forces, totaling about 1,000, and 4,000 Yunkish slave soldiers. However, Yunkish slave soldiers aren't the same as Astapori unsullied slaves.
No, indeed. Yunkai is known for training bed slaves, so their prowess lies in the art of the 7 sighs and the 16 seats of pleasure, not so useful on the battlefield.
No.
But if you jab them hard enough in the 13th seat of pleasure, that will slow them down. Ser Jorah is confident that they can easily conquer this army. However, Dany would prefer better odds. She doesn't want to just defeat this army. She wants to take the city and not lose any of her men in the process.
She asks Jorah to request that the leaders of the 2 sellsword forces and the Yunkish force meet with her in her tent, spacing them out so that she can meet with each group individually. On her ride back to her tent, she stops and talks
By
to
the way,
Grey
can I
Worm.
just interject on that? Spacing them out in time, not like putting them in different corners
Right.
of the tent.
You've got this 6 feet. You've got this 6 feet.
See, you go over to one group and you whisper to them. And if they look excited, the other 2 are like, hey,
Hey, I want that deal.
whatever you told him.
Anyway, on her ride back to her tent, she stops to talk with Grey Worm, the new unsullied leader chosen by his peers. So Jorah has given him high marks on his training as a commander.
Unlike most of his brothers, Grey Worm did not pick a new name when freed. He finds this name lucky. It's the name he was given the day that Dany set him free. She requests his presence for the meetings with the enemy leaders. Continuing on her way, she ruminates on the tens of thousands of Astapori who chose to follow her rather than stay behind in Astapor. Dany left the city under the leadership of a council of former slaves. This new host requires a lot of food but provides little benefit to Dany's cause. However, she can't find it in her heart to turn them away.
Jorah will do it for her.
Yeah, he would.
At high noon, Jorah leads the 3 captains of the sellsword company, the Stormcrows, into Dany's tent. Dany suggests they either do what all sellswords do and flee, or they can join her on the victorious side. After slinging insults in both directions, Dany tells them to tell their men they can sup on gold and glory or face death. She wants their answer by tomorrow, but they provide their answer pretty immediately with a resounding no.
2 hours later, Miro, also known as the Titan's Bastard, arrives. The huge Bravasi commands the Second Sons. He launches immediately with the insults, which Dany returns in kind. Dany points out that the Second Sons have a history of running from a fight and urges him to follow suit today as well. Otherwise, stay and fight for her. Sexual innuendo after sexual innuendo is hurled back and forth until Miro agrees to consider joining Dany's side. Dany gives him a wagon full of wine to share with his men as a parting gift. She wants an answer tomorrow.
Arstan and Jorah urge her to stay away from the Second Sons. They're near as bad as the Brave Companions these days. They're out here because nobody in the Free Cities will hire them. But Dany needs a mounted force, and either of the sellsword hosts will do for her. Grazdan Mo Eraz, the envoy for the Yunkai, arrives in style with 50 men on black horses and him on a white camel. He threatens to enslave her and sell her to a pleasure house. Knowing a bit of Westerosi politics, he suggests she move on and save her men to win back her throne. He also offers her a chest of 50,000 gold marks if she'll just keep on going.
See, I think he should have taken that in the opposite direction. I think he should have gone with the well, I'll help you win the throne. Here's 50,000 gold marks, and then move to the I'll sell you as a bed slave.
Right. If
Don't
that one didn't
start
work.
with that and then be
Right.
nice.
Yes. Yes, right.
Dany hopes to find many more of such chests when she takes the city. She offers a gift in kind 3 days to send out every slave in the city and arm them with weapons, give them food, coin, clothing, and goods as payment for their service. For that she'll spare the masters and their city. When he calls her mad, Dany utters a single phrase in response. Dracarys. Her 3 dragons respond. Drogon's flames catches Grazdan's Tokar on fire. He storms out, threatening death to her dragons.
When she's alone with her war council, Dany announces they'll attack 1 hour past midnight.
What?
That's what Jorah thought too. Seems the offer of time was simply a ruse. The Stormcrows will be busy arguing over her offer. The second sons will be drunk off the wine she gave them, and the Yunkai think they've got 3 days. They'll use these, plus the cover of darkness, to take them all by surprise. The men are impressed. Jorah says she's Rhaegar's sister for sure, Arstan adding she's a queen as well.
Near midnight, a man is caught sneaking into the camp. It's Dario Naharis, one of the captains of the Stormcrows. He's brought before Dany carrying a sack as well as good tidings. The Stormcrows are hers. Not only that, but he's hers as well. When Dany asks what the other two leaders think of that, he turns over the sack. The heads of the two men roll up onto the floor. Dario claims that her beauty was the inspiration behind his insurrection.
He said insurrection, people. Get your minds out of the gutter. He brags on his fighting and lovemaking skills for a bit, and Dany likes his swagger. He pledges his service to her. Jorah voices dissent to the idea of Dario leading the Stormcrows in battle. He should be kept under guard until the battle is over. Dany trusts the man, pointing to the heads, which are now being burned and consumed by the dragons, by the way, as proof of his loyalty. She sends Dario off to prepare his men for battle.
Jorah tells Dany that that was a mistake, and Dany loses it on him. She tells him how much he means to her, her best friend, her brother, the Lord Commander of her Queensguard, and so on. But she doesn't desire him, and she's had enough of him pushing all other men away from her so that she has only to rely on him. She then sends him away to also prepare for the battle. Hours later, a restless Dany summons Arstan Whitebeard to tell her stories of her brother Rhaegar. He tells her how Rhaegar won the greatest tourney of all at Harrenhal. Dany recalls that that's where he crowned the Stark girl the Queen of Love and Beauty.
Dany wonders if she'd been born sooner and been Rhaegar's wife, if Rhaegar would have been happier and not caused the chaos he did by stealing Lyanna Stark. Arstan explains that there was a perpetual sadness in Rhaegar, possibly stemming from the tragedy surrounding his birth. However, before the conversation can go much further, Ser Jorah bursts in and announces victory.
The Stormcrows did turn their cloaks as Dario promised, and the fight was a rout. Less than a dozen men lost on their side. 3 days later, the Yunkai gates open, and former slaves pour out. The growing mass of humanity take up the cheer of Mother in their varied tongues. Dany rides her silver through the masses as the people reach out to touch her.
Well, that's nice. Happy
Well,
ending.
nice, yes. I mean, it's nice, but it's more mouths to feed.
Yes, it is, which she was already complaining about, or
It was.
internally complaining about
Exactly.
the Astapori contingent she has gathered.
Yes.
So, just to give us a geography check here, we are in Yunkai, which is northeast up the coast of Slaver's Bay from Astapor. Beyond Yunkai in that direction is Marine, which is further north in the northeast corner of Slaver's Bay. So that's kind of where they are right now. They've made it a little bit further up Slaver's Bay before stopping yet again.
Yeah, so I mean, sort of simple-mindedly, I thought of Slaver's Bay as just being sort of a cutout, so they would be heading west as they went round. But no, it does slope backwards. So unfortunately, they are heading yet further east, which is not the
Right.
direction of Westeros.
Right. And but this is a different test than Astapor was, because as I think Jorah points out, Astapor was taken off guard. They were complacent, and
Yeah,
she used surprise and trickery to get this done. The Yunkai, on the other hand, are literally sitting at their gates waiting for her.
yeah. But of course, they are not very well defended because their slaves are not fighters.
Right.
They're lovers, not fighters.
The lovers, not fighters.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, of course she does end up using trickery of a different sort.
I was going to say it wasn't a completely fair fight here either.
Right. You know, like we said in the summary, what she does is she gives them all fake deadlines and then attacks before the deadline is up. It's a little bit unsupporting, but unsupporting. It's a little bit unsporting, but effective.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to protect the lives of your soldiers. Being unsporting is forgivable.
Yeah, all's fair in love and war, they say, right? So, if she does this too many times, she might create a reputation of someone whose word can't be trusted. You know, but it worked 2 for 2. She might have to come up with a different plan.
Who's going to call her up on that, though? You know, see that beheaded guy? He was really complaining about you.
Well, they still do have to get past Marine, and
That's
I
true.
doubt that they're going to fall for either of the two options to choose. Although maybe they won't know who's going to get the word out. I guess, right?
That's true. That's true. But she could go around, but she clearly has decided that her role here is to free slaves as she goes, so she's not going to go around either.
Right. Yeah. I guess we'll get to that. I do have some thoughts on that. About her changing tact here. It seems like her. This is not. This is a deviation from her original stated mission to
Right.
get to Pentos and Illyria Mopatis in
Yeah.
preparation for storming Westeros.
She's going to look like a huge army by the time she arrives in Pentos, but when
Right.
under closer scrutiny, it's going to look a lot like the Wildling army.
Right. Yeah. Just people.
Mouths to feed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But at the start of the chapter, she doesn't have much in the way of mounted soldiers. She's got her Dothraki soldiers, but that's a very small group, and so she's worried about it. And it does seem like a bit of a flaw with the Unsullied is the fact that they are all just infantry, just foot soldiers.
Yes. The one thing about that, of course, is I mean, do they get trained? I mean, because you're absolutely right. You know, they are vulnerable to mounted soldiers, and that's difficult to. Uh, it doesn't matter how well trained they are. That's going to be the case. So,
Right.
how do you build an army with them? Well, I mean, typically people don't build armies with them. They build bodyguards, and then you don't really need this. But when you're
Yeah.
actually fighting a real war, you do need them to be mounted, and therefore you need them to be trained because you can't just jump on a horse and be a horse rider, I would
Right.
imagine.
Yeah, I guess it's probably a cost saving measure by the Astapori masters because then they'd have to provide horses as well, for all of their
But maybe
Unsullied.
not. Maybe you train them and you say, well, he's trained. He's trained to
Right,
ride a horse. He could
right.
do whatever you want on a horse, but that's on you, you know?
Yeah, they'd still need to provide horses for the Unsullied to train on, which is
Train on,
additional
yes.
cost.
Right. And
But
then probably they would make them kill them afterwards because they'd
they
like to
probably
waste
would,
money
yes.
left and
They'd make
right.
them name them and
Yeah.
groom them and
Sleep with
then,
them
right,
and kill
yes.
them.
Now, to be fair to the Unsullied here. She's mostly concerned about her free soldiers, not necessarily her Unsullied
Yeah.
soldiers. She thinks the Unsullied will withstand a mounted charge.
Yeah. But
But
I will say of the Yunkai force, they can't all be bed slaves. There must be bodyguards and smiths and all kinds of trades going on in there. So that
right,
it's not like there's just a big sort of like silk silk wearing effeminate fops in front of them. You know what I mean?
right, yeah. There's probably a mix.
So the experiment of having the Unsullied lead, which of course is one of the other things that they don't bother to train them is how to lead one another, seems to be working. Grey Worm apparently is taking to leadership very well and is helping to organize the army, which of course we said this when it started. If none of them are leaders, it's a big army to only have one or two, generals. You
Right.
definitely need a little bit of hierarchy there.
Yeah, and we had discussed when we first learned that you have to provide your own officers with the Unsullied is we discussed whether they were able to lead themselves, whether the wine of courage that they take from the time they're very young, which helps kill their nerves so that they don't feel pain, we had wondered if maybe that had stunted the development of their minds as well, and they weren't
Right.
capable of leading themselves. But it seems, at least as far as Grey Worm goes, that he's doing a pretty good job coming up to speed
Right.
as a commander of a force.
Remind me, did they come with more wine supplies?
I don't know that was negotiated. At least a recipe.
Because it'd be
Yeah.
kind of funny if they were trained and sort of the whole time through their training they weren't feeling any pain, and then the first time they got into battle it had worn off, and they were like,
Ow, that
"That
hurts.
really hurt."
That would be bad. Yes, that would
My
be.
13th seat of pleasure.
Yeah. I will say it's a big force for a first time command, though.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
10,000 people under you. Now, Danny did mention that Grey Worm was the overwhelming choice for highest rank, which does sound like there's junior officers for smaller groups, possibly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Presumably so.
Yes.
But yeah. I mean, one thing about the Unsullied is that they're easily trained. I mean, they're trained to be trainable. That's part of
Right.
their life. So you're absolutely right. You need your mental faculties to do the leadership thing, and that was a question mark. But if that isn't an impediment, then you would expect them to take to it quite well.
Right. Yeah.
And sure enough,
As they say, they're very coachable.
yeah. So you were talking about uh, Danny's compassion uh, eating into her plans,
Right.
literally. Um,
Literally, you're right.
uh,
Yeah, there's a
it's
short
going
term and a long term issue here.
right. Do tell.
Well, the short term issue is eating up all the food as they go along. And,
Right.
the long term issue is it's inevitably going to slow down their overall progress to get to the free cities to, continue with Danny's plan.
In two ways. One is because you're dragging along this huge host with you, and the second way is because you're stopping at every city to free the next bunch.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So what does she do with them when she gets to the free cities? Is she going to try to take them with her to Westeros? Is she going to need more ships for the tens of thousands of people from Astapor and now the Yunkish slaves as well?
Yeah. She's not the Queen of Pentos. She can't say, "How's these people for me?"
Right. Now, slowing up does have some benefits, I guess, because her dragons will grow as she moves
That's
slower,
true.
but
Yeah.
they need a lot of growing before they can help her win this
Yeah.
throne, other than, getting people on board with backing her cause, I guess.
Yeah. But freed slaves are, with all due respect, not the kind of influencers you need on your side.
Right, true. Yeah, well. So let's look at the situation a bit about what's going on in Astapor. So she overthrows the corrupt government in Astapor, which is very noble, very honorable. It's a really great thing to free all these people. But then she leaves pretty quickly, and I just wonder, should we be concerned about Astapor with how quickly she left? She's kind of doing some nation building here, and you know, you might need a military force to uphold this new government to keep
Right.
insurrection from rising up.
Right. So you're thinking she left a new government in place, but without much strength behind it, and all it
Right,
would take is the slavers to sort of reestablish, overthrow this government, and they can reestablish what they had before.
right, and then possibly
Yes.
punish the slaves that
Well,
were.
by enslaving them, that's
Right.
pretty
Well,
much
yes,
punishment
that's
enough.
true.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah, I was thinking murder and torture, but yes, enslaving them would be step one.
But did she not execute a lot of the slavers?
I'm sure they did. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But, then she takes basically the whole military force with her, including tens
Right.
of thousands of just regular people.
Yeah. The last thing she wants to do is start swelling her numbers with mouths to feed whilst leaving soldiers behind. That would be
Right. Yes.
disastrous.
And Grazdan, the Yunkai envoy, he mentions that they'll just retake Astapor with the re-enslaved Unsullied after they, defeat
Yeah.
Danny's army.
Right.
So, so ultimately, she broke the system. good on her. She broke a broken system, but when you do that, it's also kind of yours to fix now,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? So,
yeah. All of this does make a case for why she'd make a good queen, of course, but it is possibly hampering her chances of becoming one.
well, true. Yeah. It's slowing down the timeline with which she can,
Yeah,
or
but you make a
extending it
good
out,
point.
I guess.
Yeah, yeah. You do make a good point though, that from in terms of the crafting of the book, it does actually give us that opportunity to let those dragons grow and become more of an influence when she gets there. If
Right.
she just
Right.
jumped on a ship and went to Westeros now,
Got there in like 3 weeks.
right? I mean, I'd like that, but the dragons aren't going to be
No.
a big influence.
She'd be like, fear me, my dragons. Watch this trick.
I throw a little piece of meat in the air, it cooks it and eats it.
Kneel before me. But there is a little bit of funny Miro irony. Miro is the Titan's bastard, the leader of the Second Sons, and he's the second group that comes in.
Yep.
The first is the Stormcrows. Then there's the him and the Second Sons, and then there's the Yunkai come in last. And Miro, who calls himself the Titan's bastard, laughs at Dany's suggestion of the Second Sons running. And he asks Dany if she's ever even seen the Titan of Bravos, which, as an aside, she has. That's where Sir Willem Darry took her and Viserys when they fled Dragonstone. Is where the house with the red door and the lemon tree was in
Right.
Bravos.
Right.
So anyway, so she has seen it. But anyway, he asks, have you even seen the Titan of Bravos? It has no tail to turn. She brings up how the Second Sons fled during the battle at Qohor with the 3,000 of Qohor against the Dothraki army. And he says, well, that wasn't under my leadership. That was a long time ago. We don't run under my leadership. And then after the battle, Dany asks Jorah, did you capture Miro? And he says, no, he fled. I thought that was a
Yeah.
little bit funny.
There was a lot of build up for that payoff, but yes,
Yeah.
it's good to point it out. Yes. So Grazdan, the Yunkai, the Yunkish leader, offers her 50,000 gold marks just to keep on going. Danny says no to that, making the good point that she'll get a lot more money if she takes the whole city.
Right, yes. It'd be easier to just take the gold and keep going, I guess. But
That's very true. Yeah.
by the way, if the name Grazdan sounds familiar, it's because of Grazdan the Great of Old Gis, the famous Grazdan. And because of Grazdan the Great, and we're kind of in the area of Old Gis,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of people named Grazdan. We ran into, it was like half of the unsullied slave master group that we ran into in that chapter in Astapor
Oh,
were named Grazdan.
right.
So,
Yeah. Um. So her interaction with the leaders of the Stormcrows and the Second Sons are pretty brutal. I mean, these are obviously, hardened fighting men who are used to raping when they finished fighting, and so they are awful towards her. But it's
oh yeah.
interesting. The book doesn't emphasize it too much, but the TV show certainly does. That Dario Naharis, the one member of the Stormcrows who changes sides and kills the other two, he is much more solicitous towards her. He's flirty, but he's not as it's not sort of like violent sexual imagery he's giving you. He's actually just being flirty with her. And
Yes. Compared to the others, very much
yeah,
so.
compared to the others, yeah, who are sort of pretty monstrous. But all
Absolutely.
of this, I mean, from the get go, it seems that she was just luring them into the surprise attack. I mean, she this was all planned out because she gives the she gives the wine to the Second Sons in the hope that they'll get drunk, and then she gives the three captains of the Stormcrows enough time to think about whether or not they, debate amongst themselves whether or not they want to change sides.
Yeah, it's definitely seems like it was planned out ahead of time. I'm not exactly sure when she came up with the plan. I don't know if it was like as she was riding back from her tent, because she's the one that set up with Jorah, bring the the groups in at all at different times. So it does seem like she must have concocted that ahead of time. Oh, she mentions this. She announces a surprise attack, and the plan is 5,000 Unsullied are each going to attack from the left and from the right, and then the Dothraki are going to attack up the center. But earlier in the chapter, she mentions that her Khalasar of Dothraki warriors is only 30 strong. So would that be enough against a 4,000 strong Yunkai force?
They're not mounted, right? So basically,
Right.
you've got these 30 screamers riding into 4,000 unwilling slaves.
Well,
I'm not
yes.
saying it's going to be completely one-sided, but they're going to make mincemeat of them.
Oh, definitely. But I'm just thinking like 30 soldiers, 30 mounted soldiers can only take up so much space.
True.
Then there's like 4,000 people that they're riding into. So I just thought,
Can
not
you
sure
all
how the
scrunch
math
up together like they're taking a photo?
Not sure how that's going to work out. But yes, once they get in there, they will probably, quickly be taking people down in multiples. But it also wouldn't take that many people to knock someone off a horse, And,
Right. Yeah, I mean, so what? You each of you've got to kill almost more than 100 people.
right, yeah, 4,000 to
That
30.
that would be
Yeah,
exhausting, if nothing
yeah.
else.
And it's not like the Yunkai soldiers don't have weapons. They have spears. They could stab the horses.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
when these Dothraki fall to the ground, then you
Yeah.
can
Then
stab
it's a much
them.
more even fight. Right.
Yes. So anyway, I just thought
Um.
that might not, but it didn't work. It didn't need to come to that anyway
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone folded. So
Um. Jorah does not trust Dario. Um. Danny obviously gets angry with him about this. Uh, it's very hard to know Jorah's mind because I think he genuinely doesn't trust him, but I think his not trusting him is influenced by the fact that he loves Danny and doesn't want anyone else near her. So
uh-huh.
it's always hard to pick this apart. It's definitely both of those things are playing into it. I think there's a legitimate lack of trust. He's now the sole leader of the Stormcrows who just switched sides again.
Right. This is the guy that just cut the heads off his two counterparts. Uh, Danny points at that and says, that looks like loyalty to me. But you could also look at it and think, well, but that guy just cut the head off of the people he was supposed to be loyal to.
Right.
So, how much
Yeah,
can we really trust
it
this
also
guy?
looks a lot like sort of reaching for the brass ring as well. Let's get rid of my rivals here.
True. Right,
And
right,
and
right,
they're sellswords. They can't be trusted as a group.
right.
But yeah, I think she's intrigued by him. She would like to have some companionship beyond Ser Jorah.
Yeah,
Understandable.
yeah. Danny just doesn't seem to see it the way that Jorah does, which is, I think,
The
Jorah
future
has.
together? No, she definitely doesn't.
I think Jorah sees it in a fairly understandable way. We can't necessarily trust this guy. And, like you're just saying, is the reason Danny can't see that this could be a bad idea? Is it because a vibe she's getting from him and trusting her instincts, or out of desperation? Or she definitely thinks some things that, the two men in the room that aren't privy to, that lead us to believe, oh, she kind of digs this
Mhm.
guy a bit
Yeah.
here. So it could be that as well. And
Yeah, but the other thing is, I think she's made this point. I think she might have made the point in this chapter, and she's made it in previous chapters. She has to trust some people.
yeah,
She
right.
always distrusts everyone. She'll have no followers. She has to trust at some point. And a guy who's willing to kill, to switch sides, is someone you can trust at least temporarily.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, she said to Jorah all the things that we've been saying about Jorah since Drogo died. regarding his advice for Dany. It all, in pretty much every instance, the end result is keeping her isolated.
Yeah.
Run further west with me, or run further east with me. You don't want to go back to the west right now. Let's keep going east where you don't know anybody and you have to rely completely on me.
Do you think that her whole freeing all the slaves in Slavers Bay is actually just to remind Jorah of why it's never going to be him? Because
Oh,
he's got that little history of slavery?
oh, I hadn't
I
thought of
don't
that
really believe
connection.
that. I don't
Right.
really believe
No, but
that.
I had not thought of that connection there.
Yeah, but all of this work she's doing to free slaves, every time he must be like, damn it,
Why
that's
did I
not
bring up
helping
the
my
slaver
cause.
thing?
Yeah.
But she yells at him and says, you can't keep pushing people away from me and keep telling me that people are bad. You said Pri was a liar. Zarazo and Daxus was a schemer. A strong Belwas was a braggart, and Whitebeard is an assassin. In his defense, he was batting like 500 there. At least because Pyre Pri
And the
was
other
a
two haven't
liar.
exactly proven themselves yet.
Right? Yes.
He's batting 100, batting 1,000, and there's two pitches on the way. We don't know.
Yes. Belwas does seem to be a bit of a braggart. So, and I went back and read the chapter when they were on the ships, and they kind of have a similar conversation where he indicates that he thinks that maybe Belwas and um, Whitebeard are schemers. And she's like, those two couldn't scheme their way out of a paper bag. Are you kidding me? Speaking of Arstan, when she can't sleep while the battle's going on, she requests his presence and asks him to tell stories of her brother Rhaegar. And she leads into it by saying, I liked how you told me the story on the ships about how Rhaegar decided that he needed to become a warrior.
Right.
And what that was about was back when they were on Balerion, the ship Balerion, not the dragon Balerion. Arstan told Dany that Rhaegar was a studious child, had no interest in fighting. Knights around the Red Keep called him Baelor the Blessed Reborn. But then one day, he found something in a scroll that changed him. Nobody knows what, but suddenly he appeared in the yard of the Red Keep and told Sir Willem Darry that he needs weapons. He must become a warrior. So that's what she was referring to there.
Did we speculate on that when we talked about it?
We probably did. I don't recall, honestly. That was a while ago.
Stop stealing my shtick.
Too bad this isn't a call-in show. We really.
First time caller, you guys are covering ground you've covered before. So I mean, sort of extending that, what we learned this time is that he didn't take part. He did take part in some tournaments, but he didn't particularly care much for it. He entered the lists, but didn't wasn't really his cup of tea. The tourney at Storm's End, Rhaegar made it to the finals and lost to another knight of the King's Guard. Uh,
Yeah, that's directly taken from
that's a
Arsten's mouth.
quote.
Yes.
Yeah.
We won't say who that other member of the Kingsguard is because there's a bit of a spoiler there in that line. So,
Yeah, well, it's sort of a spoiler that Arstan doesn't name him.
yes. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's, I mean, I don't know, of course, I never do, but logically, when I read that line, I was like, oh, I know why Arstan is not naming that person.
Or it could be the fact that he's got that white beard and he's old and forgetful of details.
I am in no position to judge.
Speaking of Arsten's white beard and possibly forgetting the details, as our story continues along, we will find many inconsistencies with the details that Arstan gives us about that particular tourney.
The Storm's End tourney.
Yes, some things he mentions just don't line up with other facts
Interesting.
that we get. So
Yeah,
we'll try to remember that and bring them up as they come along.
yeah. But then he tells the story of the tourney at Harrenhal, of course, which is the most famous one, which indeed, as Danny knows, is the one where he crowned Lyanna Stark the Queen of Love and Beauty,
Yeah.
precipitating all of this. Imagine if he hadn't. We'd be sitting here now watching TV,
Right. We'd
nothing
have
to
nothing
talk
to
about.
talk about. I do love to hear about the details of the great tourney at Harrenhal, though. Like you were just alluding to, it feels like the hub of the wheel that set the chaos into action with the
Oh
spokes
yeah,
heading off in every direction. You know, all the way back to the rumors of Rhaegar's council with the lords about removing his unstable
right.
father. You know,
Yeah.
Jaime donning the white cloak at that tournament and what it meant for Tywin and the Lannisters and their line of succession. And ultimately, where the Lannisters lined up as far as their support during the war, you know, and
Right.
the fate of
Right.
the Starks, not just Lyanna, but Rickard and Brandon
Brandon.
both being killed at the Red Keeps, and then Ned having to marry Cat instead of Brandon marrying Cat, and the death of Elia and her children, and the vengeance seeking for the Martells, and so on and so forth.
Even the Reeds, right? Even
Even
the
the
Reeds have
Reeds,
this.
yes.
Yeah.
Dany
Everything
and
happened at that point.
Viserys being exiled, leading her to where she is to this very day. So, all that to say, I'm so excited for this Broadway play that is that we've heard is coming out, focused on this tournament. I
Okay.
might make a trip to Broadway just to see it.
Uh-huh,
It's
uh-huh.
so exciting.
So one thing that Danny mentions is that Viserys thought that Rhaegar's lifelong melancholy, and there's definitely a sort of melancholicness to Rhaegar, was tied to his birth at Summerhall on the day of tragedy. But you have to help me, remind me what that is. Is that the fire that killed
Yes,
Aegon?
the fifth. Yep.
Yeah, the fifth. Yeah.
Yes.
Who would have been Rhaegar's
Great grandfather, I
great
think.
grandfather? Okay.
Yes, I'm pretty sure great grandfather, and I'll talk more about that in the background. So we will get there. But
Okay.
you know, it seems like a common thought to connect the dots between Rhaegar being born on the not only on the day of the tragedy, but at Summerhall when the tragedy,
Actually, was unfolding. Yeah.
right, and him having an apparent lifelong melancholy because Arstan kind of brings it up, and Dany is the one that says it's because of him being born amongst that tragedy, right? The shadow of the tragedy. So she thinks to herself, to us, that she only heard the story of Rhaegar's birth once by Viserys. She thinks it made Viserys too sad to tell the story.
Right.
So Viserys must have conveyed also that, you know, there's might be some connection here between
Yeah.
this kind of sadness with Rhaegar and what he was born into. So, but at the same time, Arstan tells us that Summerhall was the ruins of Summerhall was Rhaegar's happy place. It's where he went alone to, I don't know, maybe think, maybe to mourn the family that he
Yeah.
lost that day and never met. And Arstan tells us that Rhaegar returns each time with a song of tears and death of kings. And so it certainly seems like he is mourning the loss of his loved ones through song.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder why so much talk of Rhaegar. Or, you know, like, are we just filling time here in this chapter to fill it out a bit? Or are we leaning toward an agenda or just creating a, you know, depth of the world?
Well, there's definitely a little bit of that last thing. And of course, Dany has never had someone in her life who could tell her firsthand things about Rhaegar.
Right.
Viserys didn't know. He was too young to really know. He'd heard them secondhand. But Arstan can tell her firsthand things that happened. Apparently.
Yeah.
Did he witness them, or did he pick them up secondhand as well? He
Right.
seems to claim he witnessed them, but he's not always a truth teller.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, why did this happen on camera? You know, why are we hearing so much about Rhaegar?
Right.
I gotta say, from the things we hear, like what Arstan just said, it's hard to wrap my head around Rhaegar being the same guy that kidnapped and raped a young woman, you know. But as I thought about that, I also thought, People did say, apparently, said nice things about Ted Bundy. I had to ask Stacy which of the serial killers it was that was really charming and
Oh,
likable. I at first I thought it was Jeffrey Dahmer, and she was like, "Oh goodness, no, no, it was Ted Bundy." I was like, "Okay."
I like that you consult with your wife when you want to know the characteristics and traits of serial killers.
It's what she does with her time. This true crimes. Anytime I have a true crime question, she is my expert in the room. But
Gotcha.
Danny she has a discussion worthy thought here. She says she and Viserys kind of got into it over it. The idea that if the roles had been reversed and Danny had been born before Viserys, Danny was Viserys' age, it's possible, maybe even likely, that she would have married Rhaegar.
That if Rhaegar had had a sister before he was married, he would not have married Elia.
Yes,
And
yes. Viserys might have even been too young because he was only like 7 or something.
but the existence might have stopped the wedding. Too young
Yes,
to marry now, but it's like, well, I'm not marrying anybody else because I'm going to marry her when
when
she's old
yes,
enough.
yeah. She has
The-
that thought. Viserys blames her for being born too late,
Too
and
late.
she
Yeah.
blames Viserys. You weren't born a girl, or else
Right.
maybe none of this would have happened because Rhaegar would have been happy with his wife. And
Yeah.
I would like to have gotten Dany's thoughts on that because she did not grow up in a Targaryen household where marrying your brother was common practice.
Right. And of course, she's still a kid herself. She probably doesn't understand societal taboos and what have you. But given the brother she knew, she would probably be horrified by the thought of
Right.
marrying a brother.
Yes, that's true. That is
I
true.
mean, maybe this is why she's so keen to build up a positive picture of Rhaegar, so she can sort of rid herself of the
Right.
Viserysness.
That is a good reason why we might be learning so much about Viserys all the time or Rhaegar all the time when we're in Dany chapters.
So they succeed. Uh, the Yunkai free the slaves. The slaves come out and uh, they celebrate with Dany and they call her mother, and everyone's happy. And her following swells
It
with yet
does.
more untrained uh, non-fighters.
Yeah, and Dany recalls. So Jorah tells her she should not go, and she should leave. This crowd is getting a bit unruly. It's getting a bit
Right.
out of hand. It might not be safe. And she recalls a dream from the House of the Undying
Hmm.
before she decides that she is safe and rides headlong into the mass of slaves that are calling her mother, thinking they won't hurt her. And that thought comes from Dany 4 of A Clash of Kings, which is one of I think it's the next to last Dany chapter in A Clash of Kings. And it was the last vision she had in the chamber with the
Yeah.
Undying before they started tearing at her and trying to eat her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was, I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but it was like 10,000 slaves lifted bloodstained hands as she raced by on her silver. Uh, they were mother, they cried. They were reaching for her, touching her, tugging at her cloak and such things. And they wanted her, needed her, all that kind of stuff. And Dany gave herself to them, is the vision she had. So she's seeing this and thinking, oh, that looks a lot like the vision that I had. So I
Right. She
think we're
would.
safe here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. She would think that. All right. Beautiful. Do you have some background for us?
I do. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was just kind of rehashing what the 3000 of Qohor was about, in case anybody has forgotten. Danny says that the Second Sons have a history of running from a fight dating back to Qohor when the 3000 made their stand. We've talked about that in a previous background. 25,000 Dothraki were bearing down on the city of Qohor. And when the fighting started, the sellsword companies that they had hired, the Second Sons and the Bright Banners, fled. But as afterthoughts, they had sent away mail-in force, I guess. And 3,000 Unsullied were brought in, and they fought the huge mounted Khalasar to a draw.
Yes.
So that's
I
what
remember.
she was
I
talking
remember
about.
you the background. It made it come alive for me. Your background.
Well, I appreciate that. So now I'm going to tell you about the tragedy at Summerhall. So in 259 AC, King Aegon V summoned many of his close friends and family to Summerhall, which was the Targaryen vacation castle in the Dornish Marches, to celebrate the King Aegon's grandson Aerys' wife Rhaella would soon be giving birth, who is also his granddaughter because they were brother and sister.
Right.
So
Yes.
might
We
have
know
been
how this
easier to say
goes.
it that way. Anyway, she would soon be giving birth to the king's first great grandchild. Uh, Aerys was the son of the king's heir, Jaehaerys II, not the one married to good Queen Alysanne.
Right.
And Rhaegar was born in Summerhall the day of the tragic fire. So, we get a one-time possible contestant for the prince that was promised. Because remember, one of the things was born amidst salt and smoke. And, that certainly lines up
Yes.
a bit here. Rhaegar was
Right.
born amid smoke of the fire and the salt of the tears for the tragedy.
Right.
Clearly not right because he died. But then I wondered, could he have realized it? Because he was an introspective kid, Could he have thought, oh, I must be the warrior. I must need to become a warrior because I'm the prince that promised. Maybe he read that somewhere about the prince's, this prophecy, or maybe he had a dream about it or whatever. I'm not sure if the read it in the scrolls is fact or not, or just Arston, thinking that that's probably what happened or whatever. Although I will say that the man in Dany's vision when she's in the House of the Undying that looked a lot like Rhaegar's description and played the harp, he said of his baby, Aegon, what a better name for a king. He is the prince that was promised, and his is the Song of Ice and Fire. So it's possible he changed his mind at some point, realized, oh, it's not me, it's my son that's the prince that's promised.
Oh, okay. But baby Aegon died.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
That's
Yeah. Anyway, I guess I just wanted to point out that Rhaegar at one point was a contestant for the prince that was promised,
right.
and
Right.
possibly his decision to suddenly need to become a warrior was because he
I
realized it.
very much approve of that because I was thinking about it. I was trying to think about what that scroll was when you first mentioned it, and I was like, I wonder if it was something about this the prince that was promised. And sure enough, you came up with that in the background. So thank you. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate that. Comparison with the TV show, this whole thing is very protracted in the TV show. It actually spans 3 episodes, I believe.
Wow.
Um, yeah, between the sort of arrival at Yunkai, the sort of meeting with Dario Naharis, then there's a battle scene with Dario and Jorah and Grey Worm break into Yunkai just by themselves, and they sort of hamstring the forces from within. So there's no real battle. It's over before it starts. Uh,
Okay.
and then the last scene with the slaves coming out is the very last scene of season 4 of season 3 of Game of Thrones, um, where she basically is lifted up, sort of like she's at a concert and she's crowd surfing by the freed slaves,
Okay.
and it's funny actually. I think quite a few seasons finish with Danny,
Oh,
because I think season 1 finished with the dragons,
it
right?
did, right. The dragon's on her shoulder
And
after
I think
Drogo's pyre.
there's another scene with a fire that I think is a season ender as well.
Okay.
Spoiler alert: Danny might survive for another season. Um, so yeah, it was all there, including the beheadings and everything. So and she's definitely interested in Dario Naharis, who actually he's one of the few people who they changed the actor
Oh,
between
that's
seasons.
right.
He was a
Yes,
different
I
actor, and
remember
yeah,
this.
he
And he's he is played down a lot compared to the kind of outlandish description we get of Dario Naharis
Right.
in
Yeah. I mean,
this
he's just sort of
chapter.
like a good-looking, hunky guy. He actually,
Yeah.
the guy who played him first is the guy, he was in Deadpool. He was the bad guy in Deadpool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
He's
that's why
English.
they changed. He had to go do that.
He's English. I mean,
Hmm.
bad guys, English, always goes together. Pedantry Corner, you have one.
Yeah. I just the more we learn about sellsword companies, the more I wonder what is the point? Why would anyone hire a sellsword army?
All you've done is bring more soldiers to the fray, of whom you have no control.
Right.
So you possibly have just swelled the forces of your enemies. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen them turn cloak in every battle that they've participated in. The Battle of the Camps at River Run. The Brave Companions of Tywin, they turned cloak on him. Here, we're 3 for 3. Even Bronn turned on Cat in the Eyrie. She was part of he was part of her group, and then he fought on behalf of Tyrion. So, like, just what's the point? Why would you bother at this point?
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and I think one of the things you've got to do is cash on delivery. You can't play them in advance
Right.
because you've got to. I'll pay you 50,000, but only after we've won.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's the trick. Pay them afterward
But
because
it still doesn't help because now what you've got is a bunch of unpaid people who could turn on you anyway and try and steal the
right.
50,000. So yeah,
Yes.
it's a no-win situation. I
No.
understand why the great lords are hesitant to and
Yes.
use
Yes.
sellswords. The one I had was this is a common complaint. So you've got 4,000 slaves who don't know how to fight, and you're going to line them up in a field to fight the Unsullied, who you know can fight.
I think I know where you're going with this.
You have city walls.
Those
You have
walls
city
behind
walls.
you.
Now, I would be very much like those slaves. I'd be cowering in that field, absolutely terrified. And as the Dothraki screamers came at me, I'd wave my spear and fall over. Yeah, but I could drop rocks from a wall.
Right. Yeah.
That I'd be good at.
Gravity would really be helpful too.
Really. So I have no idea why you would choose to fight that way. I mean, I guess maybe to show off your numbers, but that's not a good idea.
Maybe
And
they've been
plus,
talking to Georah Mormont. They're like,
right.
700-foot wall. What do we need that for? Let's go out past it. Work for the Night's Watch.
News and notes.
Okay, so you asked for it. HBO is delivering.
I think you asked for it,
I
Mackelly.
asked for it, yes.
Hmm. What did you ask for? Do tell.
HBO announced during a press event on April 12th that they are moving forward with a show based on, drumroll please,
My
George
microphone will
Martin.
not pick up drum rolls. My
Oh,
microphone
okay.
will not pick up drum rolls. I can hit the microphone and it won't listen to it.
That's that good new microphone you
I
have there.
know.
A show based on George Martin's Tales of Dunk and Egg series.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
It is known, as
It is
Erie and
known.
Jikwi would say,
Hmm.
that the TV series has been in development for a while now, so this is a big new step they've taken here. For those who don't know, the Tales of Dunk and Egg novellas follow a hedge knight named Sir Duncan the Tall and his squire Egg, who also happens to be Aegon Targaryen
Was that a
incognito.
spoiler?
Was it?
Well, I
What is
don't
that?
know. I mean, when that show comes out, will we know that Egg is
Oh,
Egg and
it's
Targaryen?
pretty. I think it's revealed pretty quickly, if I remember
In the
correctly.
book, but the show they might
Oh,
make it a big
that's true.
secret.
It's years from now before they
All
finally
right.
get it out
Yeah,
there.
well, I'll have forgotten. I'm like, who's this Egg character?
Uh, um, George Martin will serve as writer and executive producer on the project, so
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll fit Winds of Winter in there
Bye
somewhere.
bye, Winds of Winter.
But the
You
other
asked for this.
that's my fault. The other executive producers are no slouches either, though. Ira Parker, Ryan Condal, and Vince Geradas, however, will also be executive producers. All three have been EPs on Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or both.
And speaking of House of the Dragon, production on the second season is officially underway. Co-creator and showrunner Ryan Condal, the same person, is quoted in a press release as saying, "House of the Dragon has returned. We are thrilled to be shooting again with members of our original family as well as new talents on both sides of the camera. All your favorite characters will soon be conspiring at the council tables, marching with their armies and riding their dragons into battle. We can't wait to share what we have in store. We can't wait to see it."
That's right. Very exciting that they're finally getting rolling on that, because
Yeah.
it really stinks they're not going to come out this summer of
Yeah. So
2023 with
I mean,
anything.
that we'll be lucky if we get that in 2024 if they're only filming it now.
Right. Yeah. And as anticipated, we had a lively and fun time with our Lords Paramount and Royal Kingsguard on the Sustainer video chat. Tell them what we did. What did we do?
We played a game. We played a
We
game,
did.
which is one of
Yeah.
the sustainers created. We played that game, and it was very fun. It did show how gormless and useless I am at coming up with information about A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, it was, so what we did was we played a game called Five Things, and we played a Song of Ice and Fire version where you had to name, someone gave you a category, you had to name five
Right.
things of
Yeah,
that
my
category.
question. 5 families from the Crown Lands. I
That was
still think
hard.
that's a hard question.
That was hard. You probably had the hardest question.
Jenny have also sat there like, sort of looking down at me from on high. I'm like, oh.
But I will say it is not generally just not as easy as it sounds, especially when you're on that hot seat. When it's your
Oh,
question and everyone's staring at
yeah.
you, it's harder than it seems.
Yeah, yeah. I've come up with a doozy of a question for next time. We're going to play that again because I've got one where it's really easy for the first couple, and you're like, oh, this is going to be easy. And then it gets very difficult. So I like
Okay.
this question a lot.
All right.
Yeah, but it's so much fun. We hope more of you can join us because we have a great time on those calls, and also it's a lot less PG. I notice.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. Very much. Yes.
Honest, we try to keep it clean, but
Oh, right, right, right. Yes.
all right, let's conclude. So Danny is 2 for 2 in taking over cities on Slavers Bay.
Yeah. Has this become her new focus?
Well, there's one
She,
more.
yeah, she didn't seem to need to stop at Yunkai and free the slaves. Honorable endeavor, but not sure it's helping her primary cause. And
No, no, it's
like
definitely
we
getting
were
in the way of
talking
it.
about, yeah, will she do the same with Yunkai as Astapor, set up a new government and then quickly move on? And, you know,
Will that hold?
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
will the same thing happen here as with the tens of thousands from Astapor, adding to her roving following? I was thinking about why she's doing it. Obviously, I'm sure it's an amazing feeling to free
Right.
people in this
Yeah.
situation. I'm sure it's, especially with the mother thing, she feels like she can't have children and they're all calling her mother. I'm sure that's only going to fuel the flames. But I was thinking maybe she's freeing slaves because she rode with the Dothraki and feels complicit in their taking of so many slaves.
Right. Right. I mean, she felt bad for Miri Mazdor right up until she murdered her. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's definitely probably a part of it. But I mean, it's wrong and it's awful, you know. I mean,
Right.
it's you can come to that conclusion yourself without necessarily external influences leading you
Yes.
to that conclusion, you know.
Right.
And
Agreed.
but it speaks to her being a good person. So hooray for
Uh-huh.
Danny.
Yep. Hooray for Danny.
The
Like you
one thing that
said,
the one thing that has come out of this is that she has now swelled her army to the tune of the Stormcrows, and the Stormcrows have horses. So now she
uh,
has plugged one of the gaps in her army here.
yeah, right. And she needed a mounted force. And she even, when Jorah came and gave her the good news and said that Miro, the leader of the second sons, had fled, she said, if you can get as many of them to come to our side, just keep that group
Right.
together. So she might get even more
But of
mounted
course, these are
force.
sellswords, and she's not got an
Uh-huh.
awful lot to pay them. So
Right.
is she going to hope they just become like honorary Dothrakis?
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Start putting braids in their hair or
yeah.
bells in their hair.
But all the more reason to sort of like to deepen the friendship with Daenerys because he leads the Stormcrows. If he's fond of her and wants to be around her, he'll keep them. That'll keep them together.
Yeah, that's true. It's possible. Anyway, I shouldn't say
Yeah,
it's true, but it's possible.
definitely, yes. Jorah is in the naughty corner for overstepping his bounds.
He's definitely been doing the things she accused him of.
Oh yeah,
But,
for sure.
he also wouldn't be the first person who's not secure in their relationship with someone to go that route of
Right.
trying to steer everyone else away because they don't feel secure in the position they want to be in anyway. So, but he did save Dany's life by suspecting that someone was up to no good in that wine cellar in Vaes Dothrak. Of course, he did know ahead of time because he was also part of the plot.
Part of the plot.
But she doesn't know that.
Yes. Mixed messages there. You're right.
He should have brought that up when she was saying you keep accusing everybody of being up to no good.
Well, that goes to Jorah's guilt. I mean, he's got that guilt. He's got the slave guilt. It's like, oh man. And she doesn't fancy me. Come on. Why am I
Right.
here?
Well, it
But
does seem that maybe Dany can be manipulated with a nice smile and blue eyes.
well, not manipulated necessarily. I mean, Daenerys provided everything she wanted here.
Well, yeah, manipulated might not be the best word. She can be persuaded, maybe is a better word. She's young, she wouldn't be the first young person to be caught up by the cut of someone's jib, know.
But also he delivered what he said he would, and so
While
he's doing that, no reason not to trust him. When he lets her down, that's when you get rid of him.
Did she possibly get lucky that she backed the right horse here? I mean, she can talk to Ygritte about falling for a pretty face and a nice smile and backing a turncloak and how that works out.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And is Daario going to be along for the ride now? Is he going to be a new member of this group? And if so, is Jorah, who's already jealous of Arston's position with her, is he going to let the jealousy get the best of him? Yeah. Is he going to do something to compromise his standing with Dany because he's, so jealous of Daario? What if their relationship, Daario and Dany, becomes physical? I mean, Jorah's mind might just explode.
Who's up next?
Next week, we are off to visit Arya, and you'll never guess, but they've backtracked to a place in the Riverlands that they've already been.
Of course they have.
But I will say, wow, do we get a revelatory bomb dropped on us. So you wait and see. You're going to want to tune in and hear what it is.
I will. All right. There's 3 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a positive review. You can buy some merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. Become a sustainer at the Lord Paramount or Knight of the Realm level and join us for funs and games.
Yes, that we sure do have. And as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com, but you can also go out and follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhal or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.